Alright, so it's time to talk about Brawl. There are other parts of this series for the other games, and here is the roster if you're only interested in that and not in the explanations and discussion. But yeah, Brawl had a whopping 18 newcomers, as well as 5 cuts. I'm on the side of trying to make sure everyone is always here while it's possible. I'm definitely on the side of speculating and wondering why not. So, at this point, though, there's a couple characters that probably can't come back. Obviously, I've been very nice to Rare on the Smash roster, but they're now completely part of Microsoft. No more debate. At this time, I mean, are they okay with Nintendo? Maybe. There was some Banjo Game Boy games. There was Zoo Tycoon on the DS, I remember as well. But then you also have GoldenEye, which I think had the remake around this time that seemingly went all over the place. I mean, there was the Xbox Live Arcade version that was never released, and then it was limited exclusive on Wii, and you had Activision involved too, and it's just a whole thing. So I'm not going to get involved with that for the time being. With that being said, though, I think it's still important to have these move sets return in some fashion. Now, with only 4 cuts, that means that we are going to have 1 less newcomer. Technically, 5 less, because 4 of the newcomers are going to sort of carry over the movesets of rare characters. Some of these are stretches, obviously, but I just sort of went with the character who I thought could make the most sense to realistically utilize some ways these movesets could have been imagined. So, with Banjo and Kazooie, I think the Duck Hunt duo makes sense. They obviously sort of alluded to that in the actual Smash Banjo trailer for a reason. I feel like another one that makes sense is to have. I am going to have Rachel from Advance Wars replace Joanna Dark. I particularly went with Rachel because, I don't know, she's cool. I think she sort of represents both eras, having a connection to the first era of Advance Wars through being the sister of Nell and sort of having a similar outfit to the main character from that first era, Andy. But yeah, I think you can go back and forth for this spot with Sammy as well. But right now I'm leaning towards Rachel. The next two are a little more of a stretch. I mean, I feel like Sammy or Rachel, Advance Wars, kind of has a similar tone. I know it's a different genre, but still sort of similar weapons and gadgets, well established in both series. For Orchid, I decided to go with Zero Suit Samus. I don't think it would be completely unreasonable for her to use some martial arts and I don't know what Orchid's weapons would be called, batons maybe? Like, I can picture it. I know Samus isn't necessarily known for that, but I don't think it's completely outside the realm of possibility. And the other one I went with is We Lost Gruntilda. The only other witch I can think of is Ashley from the Wario series. Obviously, their dimensions are a bit different, but I feel like the moveset could at least still work, so I'm going to go with that. So that leaves us with 13 newcomer slots. I'm going to give 3 away right away to a Pokemon Trainer-esque character. I like the idea of taking the transformation character to a new level. I'm pretty sure they had like a stamina mechanic in with it too, where you benefited from switching the characters up frequently. They would get weaker if you had them out longer. And obviously it's cool to now have 3 characters to change between instead of 2. But I probably wouldn't have gone with Pokemon Trainer. As I mentioned before, I'm not the biggest fan of Pokemon mainline. I decided to go with the Miis. I think it would be interesting. Like, when I first saw the whole Mii concept, I was a little confused because I thought we were getting like an Ice Climbers or Pokemon Trainer-esque character. But I like the idea of, not only having customizable characters, but having the customizable characters team up. So then you can not only have these crazy characters fighting, but you can also have these crazy teams teaming up. And obviously, I feel like the Mii's, I mean, you could go with some generic move sets, or maybe you can pull from different games. Like maybe you can have a Wii Sports move set, a Wii Play move set, maybe something else for that third one. But yeah, having what I dub the Mii Tag Team, I think the idea could work. And like I said, I sort of like this better than the Pokemon Trainer thing personally, so I'm going to go with it. The next two slots I want to talk about are our third-party characters. I'm still going with Sonic. I mean, Sonic just makes too much sense. The big rivalry with Mario and Sonic. The adventure games, I love them. I love some of the 2D ones as well. A lot of great games. Obviously, Nintendo and Sega have been working pretty decently together from this point on, so it's not really something up for much of a debate, in my opinion. The other character I would go with is Crash. I feel like Crash is the other sort of part of that rivalry. Obviously, he's got a bit more of a... I guess Sonic's got a pretty troubled history too, but with his ownership thing, with Sony having a stake, but then it went to Universal and then to Activision, and then it was sort of going inactive around this time. Or at least after Brawl, I think. Mind Over Mutant came out that same year, and it was still pretty annual till that point. And I think all of the games were coming out on Nintendo platforms. And how Activision was putting out, like, Call of Duty and shit on Wii somehow, too. So, I don't know if they're necessarily the closest, but I think potentially close enough from what we saw out of third-party support. And I think it's even pretty plausible to see this partnership continuing through the next two games with the Skylanders crossover coming out around the time Smash 4 came out, and then Crash Trilogy, I believe, being ported around the time that Ultimate came out, or maybe Team Racing was coming out or something. I don't remember what, but in general, things were going good. Maybe Overwatch, that was another Activision port that was coming out around Ultimate. That and Crash is probably my most wanted third party. Probably second to Banjo, but obviously we did wind up getting Banjo, so personally that's what I would go with, and given the benefit of the doubt, it's plausible if you dedicate a lot of your focus to it, even though it could be a little more difficult working with the barrier between two different countries. But we're down to 8 newcomer slots, all for Nintendo IP. Not really any more concepts to really go with. But I feel like 2 characters you kind of have to have at this point. We have Zero Suit Samus. We have Ashley. We don't have Wario or regular Samus, so I think it's time they made it in. I feel like now is a good time for both of them, too. As I mentioned, I'm not a big fan of Metroid, but it's hard to deny it at this point after the success of the Prime trilogy in particular, bringing the series to new heights, or maybe at least to a new audience. I guess the first games were pretty successful, too. Personally, I had a little fun with Prime. I still wind up not really finishing it or anything. Maybe I'll come back to it at some point, but it definitely helped me be a little more open about introducing the series. And then Wario, too. You have the Wario land games, which in general, offer a good argument for Wario himself, but now he's got a second sub-series doing decent as well. So, those are hard to deny. I'm actually not going to go for a surprise character. I feel like some of the characters that we introduced, because we had to replace other characters, were a surprise enough. At this point, though, I feel like Kirby definitely could use another rep. I know Air Ride came out between the last 2 games, and I really enjoyed that in particular too, so that helps. I would go with Dedede over Meta Knight, just because, I don't know, a little more unique, and I guess in terms of design, appeared in, I think, 1 additional game that Meta Knight didn't, maybe more. Actually, I don't know, I'm not an expert. And we don't have a lot of heavy set characters now either, so I think that's a good fit. I decided to go with 2 Zelda characters. It's kind of funny because I went from, do I really want to throw in a Zelda character with only Ocarina of Time available? To, now you got Wind Waker and Majora's Mask. Wind Waker, Majora's Mask was out in between Melee and 64. And Twilight Princess, which are both great games, and I would definitely want to complete the Triforce at this point, bring in Zelda and Ganondorf. A lot of potential, great characters. Another character I'm going to go with right now, I'm going to go with another Fire Emblem character. It's hard to ignore my bias here, but the series is really doing pretty well at this point. I mean, they've had quite a few games in between the last two Smashes. At this point, it should be, available outside of Japan as well, which is new. But hopefully helps bring the series to new heights. I wouldn't go with Ike, though. Personally, I'd probably go with Micaiah just because of the moveset potential. She's the newest protagonist, bit of a unique design, and obviously is a mage instead of a sword person, so I think that would be a little more fun to mess with. Star Fox and F-Zero were big considerations at this point. Obviously, I feel like part of that is because we know the future, and it's not too good for either of those series, but we had a lot of Star Fox newcomers last time, so I think it's time to give F-Zero a new one. You still got some entries between the last two Smashes, so I would go with Samurai Goroh. Very popular, recognizable character. I think obviously being a samurai would help for a unique moveset. Actually, I guess I forgot we already had Black Shadow, but that's still less than Star Fox, so. And after that, we have one more spot. I'm going to give it to a new franchise, Animal Crossing. I really enjoyed the first two Animal Crossings and really most of the series. At this time, we got two successful games on two platforms. I don't care as much as whether or not it's the best fit. My initial idea for an Animal Crossing rep was Resetti. He could, inherently be a better of a pick, being a more antagonistic character. Maybe not a better pick, but a more fitting character for Smash, if you want to make that argument. But yeah, I think he can, have some series elements, some different pickaxe and digging, mole. I think he's a mole, right? Based attacks and that. With different mining stuff too. If you didn't think the other stuff was enough to carry a move set, so that's how I cap off Brawl and on to Smash 4 with a lot of new series coming up and a lot more third-party slots too, so that will hopefully be pretty interesting.